And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, for episode 4 of the Spot Burn podcast, brought to you by Musky Fool. I'm your host, Bam Bam, and next to me I got Mr.
Dan Donovan,
owner of Musky Fool, one of my good partners in crime here. Today, folks, we're going to do a deep dive into gearing up and preparing for the Muskie season. So you can be sure that we're going to make it one of our best episodes yet. If Muskies, just isn't for you, this is also the time of the year where you can start posting all of that unwanted gear on Facebook Marketplace. And we apologize for your loss in advance. But before we get to the episode, let's talk about our sponsors a little bit.
all right. First, let's give a big shout out to Cortland Line Company. These guys, real deal in terms of making fly line for all sorts of different species. They also make conventional line. We're going to talk a bunch about it. I just started kind of spooling up some of my fresh Cortland line this week, actually. I got some new bass lines, some new musky lines. We're going to get into all sorts of stuff. They now offer a 600 grain line in Sync 8 and Sync 4, which is really sweet for the big guns. They got some new fluorocarbon. Yeah, we're excited. We're excited to talk about that. But Cortland Line Company, go check them out. We carry their full line of warm water stuff, and we'll be adding more and more as we go. Appreciate them sponsoring the podcast. And then secondly, from Baldwin, Michigan, Stealthcraft Boats, makers of some of the finest river boats on the market. They got a full lineup from rafts to skiffs, drift boats, power drifters, stealth welds, you name it. If you need a river boat, they have you covered. Speaking of river boats, Mr. Bam Bam, you just got a special delivery the other day from Stealthcraft, did you not?
Yes, sir. I was patiently waiting at a public parking lot, and Mr. Greg from Stealthcraft delivered my boat back from Baldwin. I beat her up pretty good last year at the end of the season, so
They don't call you Bam Bam for nothing.
Exactly. She needed a little TLC, and they did a fantastic job getting her all ready for this upcoming season, so I couldn't be happier.
Awesome. We're going to get into a little bit more about Miss Shamala Anderson, a.k.a. Shamu, a.k.a. Stealth Weld, a little bit later in the podcast. But yeah, big shout out, Stealthcraft, our second sponsor. Go check them out. Go hit up Trevor and Mike if you are in need of a boat. You can always use more boat, folks. So before we get too deep into things, as usual, now we're going to cover some current events. We've got a lot going on up here in Muskie country. Just to run through a couple quick things, FYI, coming up, there are several local club annual fundraisers, Wisconsin Smallmouth Alliance, a couple of Trout Unlimited chapters, the Muskies Inc. Cap Cities annual fundraiser. Those will all be on our website, muskiefool.com. Go check them out. They're great opportunities to show up, support your local club, your local fishery. In addition, film tours coming back to Madison, folks, April 20th, 420. It's going to be at the Barrymore Theater. Tickets are on sale on the website right now and should be in the shop shortly for you to come pick up. What else? Oh, this is just a fun one because it shocks me at how many people still have not seen this movie. There is a Muskie Thrasher horror movie in Hayward, Wisconsin. Bam Bam's designed a sticker in ode to it. Go check it out. If you consider yourself a muskie fisherman, whether it's fly, conventional, suckers, trolling, spearing, not spearing, fuck you guys. I'm kidding. If you consider yourself a muskie fisherman, the movie Blood Hook, it is a classic. You need to see it. You're either going to hate us for recommending it or love us. I don't really care, but go check it out. What else? Guide plug. We don't like to plug a lot here, but we're going to do it because we've been getting asks. It's time of the season. Calendars are starting to fill up for the Muskie Fool guide crew. If you want to get in the boat, Nick, Rowan, Mr. Bam Bam himself, Hunter Dorn, we got some options. Season opens May 6th, and we're going to start rolling pretty fast. So get on the calendar, folks. Hit us up at the shop. And second to last, we've had a few people ask about these wonderful bucktail posters. These were designed by Mr. Mikey B, and we now have them available on the website of Muskie Fool. They're pretty cool. They're actually pictures of Muskie Fool bucktail from our website, and then they got some overview here of the different parts of the bucktail, kind of from Gunnar Brammer himself. And Mikey put together a pretty sweet piece of art. I think it's a print. So those are sweet. They're $20 a pop. If you're interested, they're on the website while supplies last. And lastly, it happened over the weekend, the second annual, and it was a great time. I was unfortunately not there, but I want to get a little recap and whatnot from Josh himself, the master planner. The Fly Tying Rendezvous. It was in Menominee, Wisconsin. It was the second one, as we said, and it's the second. There's gonna be many more, and it's only gonna get bigger and better. But Bam Bam, how was it? What's the lowdown?
Oh boy, we had such a fantastic time. So that was located at the Lucette Brewery, right next to the Red Cedar River in Menominee, Wisconsin. It was the first event in the brand new event space. They've been planning that space for over 7 years, and they broke ground over 2 years ago. Just a beautiful space, Douglas fir arches, rough sawn pine. The lighting was amazing, and we had a really great turnout despite having a beautiful day in Western Wisconsin. People even showed up to come hang out with us and tie some flies and eat pizza and enjoy some libations. And yeah, it was just so much fun. Big shout out to all of our sponsors of that event: Musky Fool, of course, Wedding Farms, Nightmare Musky Flies, Foxtail Customs, and Wisconsin Fly Fishing Company. Man,
That's rad, dude. And you I mean, not to spend a ton of time on it, but like I'd love to. It was all your brainchild. It all kind of came out organically from the club that you guys started up there. And like where do you see it going? What do you is this the last one you're ever gonna do or what? Oh, look at that. We got a special guest.
sorry, folks. The ninjas have entered the screen here. I got my
If you're
cat
watching
Benji.
on video, yeah, if you're watching on video, you'll welcome to the podcast, Benji.
One of my twin boy kitties, Benjamin, has entered screen right. But yeah, the Fly Tires Rendezvous just kind of came out of like the want for a bigger meetup to kind of connect all the regions and the different fly tying clubs and communities and whatnot. So we picked the location of Western Wisconsin as it kind of bridges the gap between Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then folks from even Southern Illinois and Iowa showed up. So that was pretty humbling that they made the journey, especially through the 12 inches of snow they had to drive through. And yeah, it's such a great event for folks to just get out, meet new people, get out of their comfort zone, and just support the community of fly tying.
And there was people there that tie flies, don't tie flies. You mentioned somebody came. What was the farthest somebody traveled from? Was it Illinois or?
I believe it was White Bear, Iowa. It was
Oh my God.
it was a little over than a 4.5 hour drive. And one of the coolest prizes at the rendezvous is we gave away a custom fly rod from Foxtail Customs to the furthest traveled participant. So that guy definitely it was worth his while to make the trek. And yeah, just absolutely fantastic. The brewery had busted their hump getting it open for us, and they got the double wood fired pizza ovens, just slanging pizzas all day. It was so much fun. We missed you a lot, Dan.
I won't miss the next one. I promise you that. We were holding down the fort over here at the shop on Saturday. We also had the Musky School, Cap City's Musky School. It's back. It was the 20th anniversary. You know, we had really good registrations, and then Saturday morning we got 12 inches of snow, and it definitely derailed things. But everybody kind of trickled in a little bit later. Sessions ended up filling up. There was tons of good prizes, and that was another awesome time right over at the Wanakee High School too. So that was right down the road from the shop. But that's enough of that. Let's get into the main event. We're almost at April. The countdown has begun. 39 days as of recording this podcast until muskie season opens in the southern zone of Wisconsin. It's time to get serious, folks. It's go time. It's going to be here before we know it, and I think we're just a little bit excited. So we're going to talk about all that today. We're gonna how we get prepared, what we're doing to get prepared, emotionally, mentally, physically, gear, everything you can name it. But I think to start, where's your head at for the season, Josh? It's always, a new season brings new challenges, new goals. Where are you at?
Man, overall, the further I get into this weird game of musky fly fishing, the less expectations I have is regarding big fish and numbers and whatnot like that. If you get all bent out of shape on that stuff, that's what's going to turn you into a mad walking zombie. You just got to go out there, get over that learning curve, get over that hump of taking everything too seriously, and just go have a ton of fun. Put yourself in really high percentage areas, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You're going to have a great season. There's going to be opportunities. You're going to learn a lot from the misses. You're going to learn a lot from every outing. So those are just all important things to think about and maintaining a positive attitude throughout the season. Personally, I just want to get out of more of my comfort zone of just fishing my backyard so much and go to those spots where I've only been to a couple times, or, you know, looking at a spot that I've seen on the map a million times, but I've never, made the priority to get up there. That's something I really want to focus on this season.
So excited, but you got a lot of musky zen going on, it sounds like, and
Yes, sir.
looking to hit some new water. I like to
Yes,
hear
sir.
that.
How about you, Dano? What do you got going on in your head?
Well, this one's going to be an interesting season. First and foremost, we don't plan to open a fly shop in the middle of summer. That definitely took about 60 odd days out of my musky season last year, which was well worth it. But in hindsight, you don't get that time back. So I'm excited to have a season. Of course, we have something else happening this season, and I think this is probably the first time we've announced it. I don't know that Jen even knows I'm announcing it right now, but I'm just going to do it. We are expecting our first child in July, late July. So I got to get all the reps in that I can get, because that is going to change my world dramatically. But if you can't be a good musky angler, just grow your own, I think, is the way I'm approaching it.
Yeah. Yes, sir. That's going to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench in it, but I'm sure you guys are going to adapt quite nicely.
That is the hope. That is the hope. Jen definitely has a fire under her ass. She has multiple times. She was fishing hard on New Year's Eve just because she is going to catch a pile of muskies with the baby in the belly. So the little one can say she was catching muskies before she was born. We also have a couple exciting things going on this year. I'm getting a new boat. We're going to talk about that later. New boats are always fun. Definitely a boat that I hope allows me to fish more effectively on some of the bigger water, bigger lakes. That's the stuff I really like to do, and I've been a little handicapped the last few seasons with my shitty tin can. But I think that's going to make some major adjustments and positive adjustments. We also have the PMTT coming to Madison in June, and
Ooh.
against logic and judgment and common sense, we're gonna enter that for the first time as a fly fishing only, no gear rods allowed in the boat. Probably gonna get our asses handed to us, but we're gonna show up. We're gonna show up and see if these flies can do something early season in June on the chain. Um, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm definitely nervous, excited about that. Um, so yeah, those are kind of the big hitters. You also, this is a big year for you, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Bam Bam. A couple of years around the sun for you. You got anything special that you're thinking about?
Yeah, yeah, sir. I'm turning 40 years young this fall, which is crazy.
Woo!
Oh my goodness. When did that all happen? So to celebrate, we're going to kick it in high gear with an impromptu gentleman's fishing tournament with all the casting characters up north. We're gonna rent out half the campsite up there, and we're gonna do a 3 day kind of a fun time fishing tournament.
We got to catch
Specifically,
40 muskies, right? 40
we got
muskies for
we
Josh's
got
40th birthday.
yes, sir. 40 muskies. If you get one over 40, you get a special prize. And then we can only drink 40 ounces. So that should be
Oh,
interesting.
that's a new rule. Holy shit.
We'll see how that all ends up.
That definitely negatively impacts the 40 muskie goal, but that'll that'll be an interesting cocktail.
Yeah.
Um, Couple other thoughts from you, especially, like how do you think about getting ready for a season, like from a personal fishing standpoint compared to guiding? You know, are they different? Are they the same? Is it just one big season for you, or do you have different anticipation levels or different goals for both?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. I mean, in years past, before I was getting into all this guiding stuff, I would just kind of go out willy nilly and I'd probably forget a couple things on the first couple outings, or it would take me a while to get acclimated to, the routine of the season and whatnot. But I kind of apply the rule of extras once you're guiding. You got to have extra of everything, extra, bilge plugs for the raft, extra sunscreen, extra hats, extra sunglasses. You just got to take time to make sure that everything is in order, everything's organized. Folks are expecting you to be on point during the day, so you got to make sure that all of your gear is improperly functioning and everything's in order. I do a pretty thorough walkthrough at the beginning of the season and kind of take inventory of what I need to do, what I can anticipate is going to happen on one of the first outings. I check in my power boat. I check, the oil situation. Do I need an oil change? Check all the electrical systems. Check the battery terminals and whatnot. All of that type of stuff. In the raft, I'll probably check to see if there's any leaks. Just
There for sure is
basic.
leaks. There's a raft. There's always leaks.
There's always leaks. Yeah, just getting it all up to snuff, cleaning the raft. Checking the bearings on the trailer and all of that fun stuff. First aid, it's something that is kind of overlooked, but when it when it becomes necessary on the river, you better be prepared. So going through your first aid kit, kind of replenishing supplies, band-aids, athletic tape, those are things that we go through pretty regularly on the river. So making sure those are fully stocked. A lot of folks show up. Maybe they've traveled a great distance. They had some really good food the previous night. So making sure you got Tums, ibuprofen, aspirin, all of that good stuff. Um,
Toilet
it's not
paper.
toilet paper, super important on the river. It's not necessary in Wisconsin to have your CPR first aid training certifications, but that's something that I kind of, I hold myself up to that standard of making sure that I'm certified. So I want to refresh myself on those skills, or re-get my certification and whatnot like that. So a little bit extra prep work, it goes a long way to just make sure you have a really enjoyable day on the water, and if something were to happen, you're definitely prepared for it.
Nice. And just another plug. I mean, we are honored here. I know I am to have such an awesome crew of guides, especially from the Musky side of things. Bam Bam, Rowan, Nick Gellerstad, Hunter Dorn. Gabe will maybe sprinkle in a few trips this year if we don't keep him too busy in the Bucktail lab. But you don't have to book with us, folks. We're not the end all be all. There are a ton of good Musky guides in Minnesota, Canada, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. We've had a few of them on previous seasons of Muskie Fool Live. We haven't had all of them on, but go check them out. I mean, it's Muskies. They're a pain in the ass. They're hard for everybody, and but getting with a good guide is definitely going to increase your chances, make it more pleasurable. I know this is easy to say. Everyone probably is like, well, they're expensive, but it's well worth it. It's well worth it when it comes to Muskies, especially if you got a busy work schedule or a busy life schedule. These guys and gals, they know where the fish are, where they've been, and they want you to catch one. Honestly, they want you to catch one more than they want to catch one on their own. It's a bigger victory. So they're doing everything in their power. Believe me, everything in their power to get you on one or more. So go book a guide trip. Support local guides. That's the plug there. But let's transition a little bit and get into. We'll start it off just with kind of the gear run through. We're going to talk about kind of preparing for everything, what gear we're using, what we like, why we like it. And I think probably the most popular thing, we'll just kick it right off with the rods and reels and line and talk a little bit about that. So, Josh, give me your rundown. What are you using and why? What's all going to be in your boat, different situations, etc.
Well, as far as bass are concerned, that's primarily what we do a
What
lot
are
of our trip.
bass?
Smallmouth bass. If people don't know what smallmouth bass are, they're a ton of fun. They usually cooperate. Usually cooperate. Sometimes you got to crack the code, but typically, the average guide client is after smallmouth, or they've never fly fished before, so you want to kind of introduce them into the sport, get their chops going a little bit, get them comfortable with casting a slightly larger rod. So we typically start them out with some smallmouth fishing. So those types of setups, I'm running personally a bunch of Echo base 8 weights. I really like that rod. It can take a lot of abuse. It lends itself to the casting learning curve pretty nicely. And if something were to happen to it, I'm not going to get all upset if it were to break and whatnot. So that's a great all around rod for the bass setups. Once we get into the muskie, we kind of transition up to those larger rods. Sometimes I'll even put people on one of Tommy's 8 weight chippy sticks, the 2 piece. That's a
And
really
you say
nice.
8 weights. Yeah, you say 8 weights, but those are beefy 8 weights. They take like 10 weight line.
Exactly. You can overload pretty much any one of Tommy's rods, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in this episode. But his 8 weights are truly like a 9, dare I say, 10 weight, but they have a ton of power. They're super lightweight. They're really easy to cast, and they got the backbone for fighting most of the fish that we're going to encounter on these high percentage rivers. So I really like to introduce people into muskie fly fishing with those Tommy 8 weights. And then kind of the max that I'll go to are the Tommy 10 weights for the client type of sticks. They'll still offer a lot of power, really comfortable, very lightweight, and definitely have the backbone to fight fish. On the personal spectrum, I'm running Tommy 12 weights for sure. Generally the single piece, sometimes the double piece rods, and those are all lined up with either Cortland 600 grain. And then as we get into the fall, unfortunately, Cortland doesn't make a 700 grain, so I switched to the Airflow depth finder in the 700 grain class, and that has a really fast sink rate. So that's kind of my personal setup throughout the season.
So a couple questions there. You mentioned getting people started when they come on a guide trip for muskie with bass. Is that why when we go fishing for the first couple hours, you make me fish for bass every time?
Yes, we just
You're
got
just
to
making
knock.
sure.
We
Geez,
got to knock the
okay, I
rust
got it.
off. We got
I
to
get
knock
it.
the
I
rust
get it
off,
now.
Dan.
I get it now. Okay,
Make
I'll eat my humble pie.
make sure your head's in the game. Yeah,
Make sure.
it's always good. It's always good to warm up on a fish that's willing to cooperate. The worst thing in the world is what I tell people often is if the first time you go out within the first hour or two you run into the fish of a lifetime, because 90% of the time it's going to end in failure. You're not going to be ready, you're not going to have the experience or the skill set to know what to do, and it's going to be devastating if that fish pops off. We're going to do everything in our power to get that fish in the boat, but it's a lot better if we can kind of build up to that with some smaller species like a smallmouth pike, or even some high percentage smaller muskies before you get a crack at one of those monsters.
And I mean, and honestly, it's a good, efficient use of your money because if you catch a muskie in the first hour on a guide trip, they row you in. Your day's over at that point. It's a 1 hour trip done, right? That's how it goes.
Pretty
You just.
much.
And
No,
then the other
that's
thing you said, Tommy rods, just for those folks that are new here, those are the Chippewa River custom rods. They are a fan favorite over here at Musky Fool and for a lot of other anglers. We got them all at the shop. They're incredible. You got 1-piece rods, you got 2-piece rods, you got 4-piece rods. I think we definitely favor those 1 and 2-piece rods just because there's less room for failure. But just wanted to point that out for folks as well.
Yep, I can't say enough good things about Tom too in general. If you ever break something or scuff it up or knock one of the eyelets off, Tommy does a fantastic job of taking care of you.
Oh, he definitely does. I think it was a couple of years now at Treelands. Jen, She actually caught a muskie in the first 30 minutes without casting. It was pretty sweet. She just figure eighted a muskie and caught it, but the rod tip broke. And the next day, Tom had a new tip for her, all fixed up. So she was all good to go, which was kind of
Man.
that was as VIP service as it gets. I don't know if there's a warranty in the land that gets better than that.
Yeah,
So
that's
he's the
5-star
man.
customer service right
Oh
there.
yeah. Oh yeah. All right.
Dan,
So I got the lay of land on what you're running. You also talked about switching over to 700 grains as the season goes on. And I have a question there because just for again for folks, we get a lot of questions on fly line. The grain weight we try is the overall weight of the line, and you want to think of that kind of matching up to your rod weight. So typically 10 weights can take anywhere from 350 grains. Some of them, Tommy's 10 weights can take up to 450, 12 weights, 500 plus, but, and then you additionally have the sink rates, separate variable, which is how
correct.
quickly that line is going to get down. We have floating lines for muskie. We don't use them a ton, because we're oftentimes trying to get flies subsurface. Even on our top water flies, we're using intermediates. When we got stuff from, they're like I said, floating, intermediates. You got the I-2-3s from Scientific Anglers. You got Sync 4, Sync 5, Sonar Muskie, Sync 8, Sync 10. So you got lots of options. We'll talk a little bit in a second about when we use what for which situation. But talk to me about where your head's at, why you're switching and going with a heavier grain weight as the season goes on. Where's that coming from? What's the idea behind that for folks that are listening?
It's definitely daunting when you get into all of these grain weights and sink rates and blah blah blah. And even so, if you get into the spay game, it's probably even more so daunting. But think about the river and the river levels and whatnot. The water column in the spring is going to be very deep because you're going to get snow runoff. You're going to get some of those dam systems pushing water through the entire river train. So everything's going to be deeper. You're going to want something that probably sinks down a little bit deeper. As the summer progresses, you're going to get less rain typically, and the river is going to get a lot shallower, and those fish are going to be in shallower spots. So you're going to want to use a line that's either, almost subsurface, like right below the surface, or somewhere like halfway down the water column. If you're using a full sink line or a super heavy grain at that time, you're going to be snagging up on a ton of rocks and trees and debris and all that stuff. The reason we transition into those super heavy lines in the fall time is because those fish are typically going to their wintering holes where the water is a little bit warmer. They can seek refuge and they're going to be a little bit more lethargic. So we want to get down way deep in the water column. So that's kind of why we reserve those big heavy lines for the fall time. But of course, as we talked in an earlier episode, there's exceptions to all these rules.
Yeah. Well, and I think the confusing part too for folks is, again, the grain weight does not determine the sink rate, but as you get to 600 and 700 grain lines, the manufacturers typically only make those lines in super deep, fast sinking rates. So Josh talked about the 600 grain. We have options in a Sync 4 and a Sync 8 in 600 grain, which typically you run a little bit deeper, but can get big flies down, mid level. But that 700 grain line from specifically the Airflow one, they only make it in the Sync 10. So it's a big heavy line for throwing big flies on big rods, but it only sinks. It's got a heavy sink rate, so it's not something you want to necessarily use early season, especially
Yep.
on the rivers. Yep. It's also, especially kind of into some of the rods that I use, it's a really good line, especially those 600 and 700 grains. I know you use them on your 12 weight.
Yep.
I tend to like those lines on the two-handed rods. So these two-handed rods, then there's a couple different versions of them now. Tom at Chippewa River put together the two-handed Predator rod. I think that's almost a year and a half old now. for two-hand casting and water loading. Separate things there, people. Water loading and two-hand casting are definitely different. And they really need that full 600, 700 grain. And it kind of does limit you because you need the big grain weight to cast those rods, but it comes with a deep sinking line.
Mhm.
And then secondly, we're going to talk about these. This is probably one of the things I'm super excited about, not only for Musky Fool the shop, but just for myself. We hopefully by the time this episode drops, they will be live on the site and live in the shop. But we are very, very grateful. RB Miser Custom Rods. He is a custom rod builder. Him and Nick, so Rob Miser and Nick Moses, have put together. They have a two-handed casting musky rod. The two sizes. They are absolutely stunning. They got jungle cock feathers epoxied into the butt section, beautiful grips, and they're just really good fishing tools. And we're going to have those exclusively. We're the only fly shop that will have the musky rods in the whole country, in the whole world. And they're incredible. They're not cheap, but if you want to take things to another level in terms of ridiculous fly size, or you want to get into the two-hand casting, these are incredible tools. So we have Chippewa rods kind of at that mid price point, really high quality, made by Tom. And then we're also going to have the RB Miser, which I think I touch on in depth because it not only excites me personally to be able to use this stuff, but it also is exciting just to see more and more musky specific fly fishing gear come onto the market. It's
Mhm.
taken more seriously, and I think it just gives us more tools. Like specifically for these rods, this is what allows us to cast really, really big flies. But separately, it also allows us, I believe, to kind of keep up with some of the conventional anglers. We can make casts at greater distance and with less false casting. And then we also get these kind of heavy duty rods that really allow us to deliver strong figure eights, kind of speed them up, offer different presentations because of how stiff they are. So really exciting. I'm like kind of giddy to start casting mine. It's unfortunate because usually in spring you don't need that heavy of a gun. But I'll probably be casting it out of the gates. I've already started casting it a little bit in the park, getting ready, not only for the season, but just to be able to talk about it with folks here at the shop. So that's one I'm excited about. Those will definitely be in my boat this year. And they're pretty sweet. They are very, very sweet. The other rods that I use personally and have been using for a while, it's another musky specific rod. And I think that's important for so many reasons because what we're doing, and we get this question too a lot, is like, hey, I have an 11 or 12 weight that I got for tarpon fishing, and will that work? And the simple answer is like, yes, it'll work, kinda. But I think when you break down the differences between some of that big game saltwater fishing with muskie, it's remarkably different. We are oftentimes blind casting compared to sometimes and usually sight fishing in the salt. We are figure eighting and we're bringing our flies all the way back to the boat. So we need to be able to not only maneuver the fly next to the boat, but have enough backbone to handle fish and hook set fish. And then additionally, like we're just throwing much bigger flies. Even a medium or small size musky fly is an extra large tarpon fly.
Mhm.
So we need the rods to perform differently. We don't need that super fast tip. We need a little bit of a stiffer tip section and that rod to really load up deep into the butt so that we can make long, slow, kind of lazy casts that deliver power and turn over those big flies. So another one, not to belabor the point, that I really like, um, designed by the folks at Loomis, with Chris Willen, is that G Loomis IMX Pro Muskie. It came out now, man. It's got to be 4 or 5 years old, I believe. And I'm just super glad that they still make it because it was kind of the first, right alongside Tom's Chippewa rods, first musky specific rod. And from the way the grips are designed to the way it casts, it's awesome. It's awesome. They come in the 11 weight and 12 weight. They're different rods. The 11 weight is a little bit more of an all day single hand caster. The 12 weight is definitely for big flies. You can single hand cast it, you can two hand cast it, you can water load it. Um, so those are some of my favorites. I load the 11 weights up. So I'll probably be fishing, the 11 weight I usually have rigged up with like a full intermediate, that full intermediate pike muskie from Cortland. I can fish shallow, I can fish top water with it, I can fish smaller flies with it. And then the 12 weight I usually have lined up with the Sink 4. And then I got the two-handed rods that'll have probably a Sink 4 on one and a Sink 8 600 grain for both of them on the other. So at any given time, that's how I like to fish. I know it's in a lot of gear and does get expensive, but when I'm in the boat, I don't want to be switching reels. I don't want to be swapping spools. I don't want to
Mm.
be changing flies. I want to be able to pick up a rod and have it ready to go, whether I'm casting back or changing approach in a certain spot. So those are kind of like the rundown, I think, of some of the setups I'll be fishing. We missed a bunch of other rods too, and I don't know that we use them specifically, but if you look at kind of our guide crew with Nick and Hunter and those guys, you got a few other good rods in the mix. The Reddington Predator, they make a musky rod. A little bit newer and has been really popular lately is the Echo musky rod. And just to hit it again, I get excited to just see these brands making musky specific stuff. It really is required to do it all day consistently throughout the season. So if you're looking at a new musky rod, I encourage you to look at an actual musky rod. There are definitely crossover rods that can do it, but there are also affordable to really expensive, but also incredibly nice musky specific rods. They are worth every penny.
You're totally right, Dan. We're definitely spoiled in this generation. Our forefathers of the musky fly fishing endeavor paved a really good path as they were Frankensteining all these weird saltwater rods together. So we're very spoiled in that regard with what's available currently. I got a question for you, Dan. For the folks out there that are just getting into musky fly fishing and they're looking for a good all around setup, what would you recommend when they walk into the shop or they call the shop for your starter setup that's really going to get them going? It's going to expedite the learning curve and kind of cover all their bases.
Yeah, good question. So I think in general, when you start fly fishing, it's really common. We all did it. We still use them. There's a lot of combo sets, Reddington, Echo, Cortland makes a good one. Um, Unfortunately, they don't make those for musky grade. They're usually like 5 weights, 4 weights, 8 weights. So we tried at Musky Fool to put together effectively a starter kit for muskies, but we didn't use kind of your out of the box crap. We picked stuff that we use off the shelf, put it together in a package. So that's something to check out. One of the ones that we probably recommend the most for folks starting out, just because it's at a really good price point, is that Echo Musky Rod. I think it comes in at $329. It's
Mm-hmm.
usually a tie between that and the Chippewa River. Chippewa River is at 400. Um, and you're going to get really good rods out of, you're going to get musky specific rods out of both of them. And I think those are probably the most common. And then the thing I'd also say more so probably for like saltwater fly anglers coming into muskie or conventional muskie anglers coming into fly fishing for muskies is, we definitely recommend spending your money on a nicer rod if you can. It's the workhorse. It's the thing you're going to be casting. It's going to be saving your arm, thing you're going to be figure eighting. You can, for lack of a better term, skimp on the reel, right? And it's kind of the inverse of conventional musky fishing where you see a lot of guys and gals have, um, maybe more affordable, budget friendly rods, but they buy a nicer reel. And that's because the reel's doing all the work. The reel is what's ultimately, you know, unfurling all the braided line. It's reeling in the heavy baits. You're not doing that with fly fishing. You're doing it with the rod. You're casting basically with the rod and the line, and you're stripping it in with your hands. So
Mm-hmm.
spend your money on the rod if you can. The Echo, Muskie, the Chippewa River, or getting up into like a Loomis or something like that. And then, with some of those starter kits I talked about, we're typically looking at, reels that are sub $200 150, $100. Echo Ion, Reddington Behemoth, Temple Fork NTR are kind of the popular options there. You can get spare spools if you need it, pretty readily available, and not break the bank too much on that one.
Excellent. That's all super good information. I know when I first started, I was kind of lost and didn't really know what to look at as far as budget and whatever, and whatnot. So that's all super good. Good info, Daniel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm plugging and selling a little bit, and I don't like to do that especially on the podcast. But the starter kits, we rig them up so that you open the box, you loop to loop your leader, you clip on your fly, and you're ready to go. It comes with fly line pre-spooled that we pick out based on where you're fishing, how you're fishing. Comes with 3 flies that we pick out, and it comes with 2 leaders that we trust. So it truly is like you're ready to go. And I think a lot of people have been digging that and having success with that. So,
Oh yeah.
shameless plug. Kind of talking about leaders there a little bit. I think it's a popular question. I also know it can get some eye rolls because people think it's not super important, and there's a million different ways to slice that one. But I guess just really quickly, Josh, I'd love to hear what you're running, material wise, setup wise, and then I'll share a little bit about myself as well.
Well, obviously the fly line and the leader, they're your lifeline to that fish. So you got to make sure that everything's in order and it's all logically tapered and kind of calibrated for the flies that you're casting, the line that you're casting and whatnot. I got a couple examples here actually of kind of some of the setups that I'm running. So I like to do fluorocarbon for the butt section. And I'm typically running like this 30-pound or this 50-pound for the butt section, depending on the size of leader I'm using. 30 pounds a really good all around butt section. And I'll tell you why, because typically your fly line is going to have a breaking point of somewhere in the ballpark of 35 to 50 pounds. So you want to have something that's just a little bit less than that. If you were to snag up into some deep water, say you're wading or you're in a boat, this is going to break before you snap your brand new fly rod in half. So this is a really good all around butt section. It's very easy to tie knots with. Once you get into the big daddy game, you might want to level up to 50 pounds if you're fishing out of a boat and snags aren't as much of an issue. This is going to give you a lot more assurance that you're going to connect with that fish and everything's going to go properly. And then as far as bite guard goes, those fish have some crazy teeth. So we're using a knottable wire. Portland makes some great knottable wire here. I'm typically also running the 35-pound or the 50-pound version of that. 35 again is going to be a lot easier to tie all of your knots with. It's going to be a little bit more supple. And then 50-pound, of course, is when you're going into one of those fisheries that's low percentage but very large fish, and you just need to have that extra peace of mind. Sometimes we'll run into a spot where it's got a high percentage of pike, and we're fishing and bass and whatnot, or we are fishing muskies, but sometimes we get the occasional bass. So I'll throw on some of this like 10-pound knottable wire.
And that's on your bass setups, is what you're saying?
Yep. So
Yep.
if we find that during the day we're getting bit off a lot, I'll throw some of that 10-pound wire on there just to kind of mitigate the bite offs, and we're still going to catch bass, but it's not going to be as obtrusive as that thicker gauge wire, and we can throw those smaller 3 to 5 inch flies with it pretty easily. So yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you did not mention fluorocarbon bite guard, I think is important. We don't take many strong opinions when it's not necessary, but I think that's one based on experience from myself, from each other, from a lot of people that have been doing this longer than us. There's no real reason to mess around with fluorocarbon bite guard in fly fishing when we have knottable wire that's a thinner diameter than fluorocarbon, especially because if you need to use fluorocarbon bite guard, you're typically 80 pound, 100 pound, and you get some thick fluorocarbon. That wire
Yep.
that Josh just talked about and showed on screen for the video viewers, it's super thin diameter. You can tie perfection loops, Albright knots, all sorts of stuff with it. Really recommend that stuff. It's going to save you. It holds up well. It fishes well. The fish do not spook off of it. It's, and if it comes in like camo green, and then some of the other brands offer like a camo-y brown. So really good stuff. Highly recommend. Almost require it. Like honestly, it's
Yeah.
use that. You don't need to get bit off musky fishing.
If you're a purist and you're trying to go all mono or fluoro in your leader setups, this game
Fuck
just
that shit.
that's not for you. This is a blue collar game. We're down and dirty. Look at it as like you're grinding like a grunt laborer on a job site. You're chopping wood all day. You might get one, two, three chances at a really great fish during the day. Why would you subject yourself to fluorocarbon? And
I
and
agree.
and the chance that that fish could slip away. See this fish behind me? I'll try to go this way. This is a 50-inch muskie, and that was bagged with a 15-pound wire bite guard. I still have the leader. It's right over in this cabinet over here. 15-pound wire bite guard, 50-inch muskie. So it doesn't take much, but just having that extra little peace of mind that that fish isn't going to chomp through the last 9 to whatever inches of your leader is fantastic.
I agree. So a little bit deeper on this, and then we'll keep moving. But as far as the overall leader setup, I'll share a little bit of my thoughts and sprinkle in yours as well. But we're also running really short leaders. So short, I would say it's all relative. If you are a fly angler coming to musky fly fishing, short leaders. We're not using 9-foot, 12-foot leaders. Typically, these are 3 to 5 feet in total, including your wire bite guard and your fluorocarbon. I typically run about a foot and a half of wire to about 2 feet of fluorocarbon. And part of that is because we don't need that leader material to lose energy as we're trying to transfer through the fly line into a big fly. So that shorter leader helps cast those big flies. You also don't need to worry a ton, about spooking muskies, especially when you're using some of that Cortland stuff that's like a camo-y brown or camo-y green and blends in with the water. Even in super clear water situations, max, I think I think the longest musky leader I've ever put together was like 7 feet. You don't need a ton. And then I think a little bit kind of under the hood on how we're rigging some of those up. There's a bunch of different ways. I don't know that we've landed on something perfect. I think from the super heavy duty trophy fisheries, you can use some of that GT rigging style where you have the mono braided loops that are kind of nail knotted on. I typically, for like the most of my musky fishing, I'm cutting off that welded loop. I'm tying on with a nail knot or 2 nail knots, kind of 50-pound fluorocarbon to my end of my fly line. I do about 4 inches of that. And then I have a perfection loop. And then I have 2 like materials. So instead of the welded loop on the fly line to a loop on my leader, I have like to like. I don't love seeing that fluorocarbon loop kind of eating into my welded loop. Some of those welded loops can fail too. So I run perfection loop right to my fly line, a few inches of fluorocarbon to a welded or a perfection loop. And that's something I'll do like now. I'll go through when I get my new fly lines on my reels. I'll go rig those up. I'll cut off my welded loops and I'll get my perfection loops. I'll, put a little UV knot sense over it so they're smooth and they're running through my leader or my guides really smoothly. And then I can connect my leader loop to loop. As far as going down the line, I use personally an Albright knot to connect my wire then to my butt section. So that 2.5 feet of fluorocarbon to 1.5 feet of wire, I use an Albright knot. I find that to be absolutely bulletproof. Of all of the failure points in your setup, that one seems to never fail. If you tie the correct Albright knot, it's absolutely bulletproof. There's definitely other ways to skin that one, but That's what I use. And then if we're going all the way down, I end on my wire. I do a perfection loop at the end of the wire. And then there's a couple different setups here. So I think for convenience and maybe smaller fish size fisheries, I definitely still occasionally use stay lock snaps size 4. I think what we're moving more and more towards, especially on the trophy fisheries, is the welded loop split ring. So I'll
Hmm.
tie that perfection loop in the wire into a stainless welded loop. We sell these at the shop as well, and then I'll clip that onto a split ring, and then the split ring with the split ring pliers is how I can attach to my flies. That just, again, stay locks work 99% of the time, but muskies seem to always exploit that 1%. So be careful with that. I think for some of the smaller fish, smaller rods, smaller flies, the stay locks seem to hold. As you start, getting into that 12 weight, 2-hand casting, 15-inch flies, trophy fisheries, we do see some more exceptions to the rule, and that's, I think, where that welded loop and split ring come in. And then lastly, just a little bit on my end, and then I'll let you chime in, Josh, on why another little secret side effect of this leader setup. I've got it dialed personally where if you zoom out, I have effectively how I'm connecting is that perfection loop to a perfection loop, loop to loop. So I'll have a little bit of a nail knot with some UV knot sense. I'll have my loop to loop. And what that does when you have a 3.5 foot, 4 foot leader is you effectively have a figure 8 marker. And what I mean by that is when I could close my eyes, I could be fishing in the pitch black and I'm stripping my fly line in and I can feel that nail knot tick on my guide and the perfection loops tick on my guide. And I pretty much know when that ticks through my top guide, I got one more strip and I'm into the perfect distance to do a figure 8. And
Yep.
I got about 20 inches, give or take, of leader outside of my rod connected to my fly. And I can really do a perfect figure 8. And that's helped me even in daylight when you're just fishing and you're doing it over and over again, but especially for fishing at night in low light conditions when you can't see. I think that's a huge benefit to being able to make sure you come into a smooth figure 8, and having that kind of physical cue on your fly line. So that's one benefit I like to my setup. I don't know if you change yours at all or tweak it at all, but a little bit of overview on how I do things.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it all comes down to experimentation and figuring out what works best for you and systems that you really like. Over the years, I've switched up, what I've done for my butt section, the knots that I've tied, the wire bite guard. I've gone from knot to kinky titanium to knottable wire. I've tried fluorocarbon, all that stuff. And it's interesting to hear you say that you do nail knots with the UV on there, where I like to do Albright to Albright. So Albright, I cut my welded loop off the fly line. I do an Albright knot there, Albright knot from the butt section to the wire bite guard, and then I end things with a polymer knot on a split ring, usually on
Yep.
my musky flies. Now I know that there's guys out there that they pre-tie all of their bite guards onto their flies and then they kind of spool them up in their box too. And then you do the handshake hitch or the
Loop
whatever
to
it's
loop.
called,
Yeah.
the loop to loop hitch and whatnot. It's all personal preference. There's a million ways to skin a cat. Just go out there, experiment, try new things. There's no science to all of this. Maybe someday in the future we'll do like a super in-depth the best
Break
of the
test. Yeah. Yeah.
break
Yeah.
test super, the it's almost like a March Madness brackets of the best knots out there in leader setups, but we'll see if we ever get to that. Yeah, the moral of the
Yeah.
story is like everyone has their own personal preference. I fish with guys that have been in this game for a very long time. They're still using fluorocarbon. And then there's folks out there that are using all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So
I would say I've had one issue where I used to use that loop to loop where I had the wire tied into my fly directly, and then I would loop to loop into my kind of butt section. And the only issue I ran into that was one time, and it was basically seemed to figure out that it was the wire loop that was eating into the fluorocarbon loop. And
Yep,
it spooked me. It could have been a nicked fluorocarbon. You never really know. But I think the other moral maybe to that story is you gotta be checking this stuff with Musky.
exactly.
My nail knot, I'm check before I go out, I'm pulling it. My if I see any imperfections with my leaders, those leaders can hold up pretty well for a while. These aren't like trout leaders where I tend to be redoing it or putting a new one on all the time. But you got to check them, and it's just not worth it. Yes, you can argue that fluorocarbon costs $30 a spool and wire $20, but like, you're really gonna say that that fish of a lifetime was, not as important as $60? I just think that's bullshit. So I'm checking it, even my snaps or my swivels or my um, split rings, like all that stuff. You just want to make sure it's perfect. I don't like leaving anything to chance when it comes to muskies.
Absolutely. To echo what you said earlier, Dan, about um, uh, leader setups and checking your systems. That's the most important thing on the water. Like constantly checking your stuff. I lost the biggest fish of my lifetime because there was a small nick in my eyelet. So it all comes down to your systems checks and how seriously you all want to take this game.
Hmm. Yeah, we could talk about that a little bit. The ceramic guides versus snake guides, I think. Just
Ugh.
briefly, there's no perfect thing, right? I think the ceramic guides that Tom and Chippewa River exclusively have on their rods, um, they're absolutely more resistant to that heavy sinking line. So I do find myself, just from a science perspective, the tungsten that's in the fly line that makes them sink and adds weight to them, um, it's a heavier material than stainless steel. So it will
Mhm.
absolutely over time wear through stainless steel snake guides. That being said, the ceramic guides have inserts, and those little ceramic inserts can come off. And then all of a sudden you're left with the stainless steel guide, and we do see some reduced casting performance. Josh is a phenomenal caster. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, so he probably doesn't see a big difference, but you will see a little bit more resistance from those ceramic guides. I tend to, try to keep my super heavily sinking line, those sink eights, in ceramic guide territory on my Chippewa two-hander. Um, and then, full intermediates, I don't really feel an issue putting those on snake guides, but it's going to wear down. There's no perfect solution. For the guys out there that say ceramic guides are the end all be all, the guys that say they don't care, they're both kind of wrong. You really just have to check this stuff. Check your guides, check your rods, check your equipment. It kind of has to be part of your mental checklist.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this could turn people off and be like, that's a bunch of bullshit. I just want to go fishing. I don't have to deal with that crap when I'm trout fishing. And yes, you're correct. You don't have to deal with that. But it's kind of the stakes, what it's kind of the table stakes for musky fishing, whether you're fly fishing or conventional fishing. It's just this constantly, honestly, you get a little paranoid. I do, at least, of just like, man,
Exactly.
did I retie that leader? Or is that an old leader? I don't know. I'm just gonna tie a new one. Like, you just have to get like that, especially for bigger fish. So,
Yeah. Oh yeah. The bigger the fish, the less room there is for error. So you got to be on point. On
yep.
point. Nothing can go wrong. Dan, should we segue into something that
Yeah, we
I
should.
think
We should.
let's segue into something I think people overlook quite a bit is the oral surgical aspect of so
Ah,
you just bagged a big
the
fish. Now what do you
and the
do?
terminal tackle. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you gotta make sure you got all of your terminal tackle in line. What are some of the things that you bring on board with you, regardless of what you're fishing
Yeah,
for, just in case the oh shit scenario plays
yeah.
out?
So I think the first oh shit is stuff breaks. You need to retie a leader. I try not to tie leaders in the boat for muskie. I try to have it pre-done, but so in my little boat box, if you will, I will have extras of everything. You mentioned that earlier, but I'm gonna have extra spool of fluorocarbon. so I can tie an extra leader if I need to, or make a change, maybe lengthen it up. I'm going to have a spool of knottable wire. I'm going to have a little baggie with stay locks and split rings and welded loops and UV, knot sense. Just all of that. I want to have, especially on the flies where I'm split ringing hooks in, I'm going to have extra hooks. I'm going to have egg sinkers. Oh my God, everybody, egg sinkers. It's not real fly fishing. Fuck you.
Taboo.
That's what
Taboo.
I say. It's fucking, it's a proportionate weight. It's just like adding split shot, except it's proportionate to the size fly. We could probably have a whole episode about that, which we likely will. But yes, I have extra egg sinkers in my boat. Sometimes you need to go deeper and you just need the fly to get down. Athletic tape, sometimes your hands get chopped up. It's sunny, it's hot, the fly line gets, it. So those are kind of the checklist there. I'll also have, bump board, a girth tape. I like to keep that all in my little boat box. And then I think where you were probably going with this, most importantly, is I think that surgical / landing gear. I can't emphasize this enough. I know we're going to sound like broken records. It might even come off as like, oh, we're just preaching this, but we don't actually do it because it's not cool. And that, again, bullshit. We are musky fishing. These are huge fish, even 30 inchers. They're precious resources, no matter if they're stocked fish, no matter if they're native, if you're in North Carolina, if you're in Canada, Minnesota, they're precious fish. They are big and burly, but they're also sensitive, especially when you're catching them in warmer water temps. So it is an absolute fucking requirement, emphasis on the fucking requirement, to carry the following gear with you. Long nose needle pliers. Bring a couple. You might lose one into the drink. And I'm talking not like your little forceps and your little fancy hatch pliers that go in the cool little thing. I'm talking long nose, 11 plus inches. Loon makes one now, fly fishing brand. Otherwise, we just sell the ones that you get at the hardware store, but long, sturdy. If I could get ideal, I like the 45-degree bent tip, but it doesn't really matter. But you're going to be going, a trophy muskie. Rowan caught a muskie last year that had a 14-inch fucking head. If that fish has that fly even quarter of the way down, you got to go into a mouth with sharp-ass teeth, a fish that does not want to be hooked, does not want to have anything removed out of its mouth. You got to go all the way in and get that out. A 6-inch forceps ain't going to cut it. So you got to have a long needle nose pliers. Must. And I mean like in the boat, if you're going to go beat a fish below a dam, pack it in your waders, put it on your backpack, have it with you every single time. I'm preaching here a little bit. I'm on my soapbox. You got me fired up, Josh.
Preach, baby, preach.
Secondly, I believe you absolutely 100% need a Nipex. I am not saying you need a hook cutter. I am saying you need a Nipex. I have seen shitty hook cutters perform next to Nipexes. It is night and day. Yep. Nipexes could cut my fucking pinky off. When you have to go do AKA surgery on a fish, you want to be decisive and quick. You don't want to be raking on them and the thing won't cut the hook. And no, you want to be decisive. And the Nipex, I think, allows me to be confident in that. When I get in a situation where I need to cut hooks, which I prefer to do, by the way, I don't like to rip hooks out. Even the barbless, if you get a barbless hook in a gill or deep in their throat, you cannot tell me, I know this is opinion, it's not science, but you cannot tell me you're better off pushing that hook out. It doesn't always come out easily. I want to be able to come in, cut it, be done. I didn't shove and shake at the fish. I'm making this motion on video. You can't see me do it if you're just listening on podcast, but I'm shaking. You want to be decisive with that. Decisive. I'm going to say it 100 times. And I think the Nipex allows me to do that. And then what you do, just technically, you cut the hook. You still have the little pointy end stuck in the fish. Now I can go in and pop that out really easily. There's no big fly hanging on. There's no other hooks hanging in there. They're going to hook me or the fish. I cut them. It's the reason I like to use the split ring and hooks in some situations for bigger fish. So long nose pliers, Nipex, jaw spreaders. you have options here. I definitely prefer the new cool kind of pistol grip ratchet ones from O-Pros. I can open it a little bit. I can open it big, but it's not spring loaded, so it doesn't just pop the fish's mouth open and poke a hole in their top lip like those spring loaded ones do. But at the end of the day,
Super,
just go ahead.
super ergonomic, and it has those rubber protectors on there, so you're not gonna
Hmm.
jack a hole in their upper mandible.
Yep. Well, and I think part of that too is on those spring loaded ones, it's just open or closed. And
Yeah.
sometimes you got a small fish and you've seen it where it's just like you rip their face open and it's not
Yep.
ideal. Not ideal. So the jaw spreaders though, when those fish sometimes will not open their mouths. They are clamped down. They do not want you to go in there, and you need to be able to open it with the jaw spreader. And this is where, yeah, experience comes into play. If someone has caught more muskies than you, it's very good idea to sometimes let them handle sketchy situations if you know it's hook deep.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're not always in that situation. I think when I first started musky fishing, I can vividly remember it. Like when I first set it out on my own musky fishing without my dad and my uncle, I remember I just would just watch videos and of people doing this because I wanted to be decisive. And you don't get a ton of reps, even and
Yep.
you're always going to get a different situation. So just be prepared, just deep breaths. If the fish is in the net, let them breathe and get comfortable. Don't think that you have to, do this super quickly. I would say safely is better than quickly every time when removing hooks from muskies. So using the jaw spreaders to pop their mouths open. If you got a buddy in the boat, it's really nice to have them help you because then you can grab the fish by the gill plate. He or she can open the fish's mouth with the jaw spreaders and you can get in there and do some surgery. You can do it one-handed. You can do it by yourself. It takes a little bit of practice, but so Nipex, long nose, and jaw spreaders, I think are absolute must-haves. And then in addition, a net and like a musky fucking net, not some small little walleye steelhead net. Plan to catch big fish. Plan to, I like having that extra room to work with. I like giving them a little bit of a fish pen so that when they're in there, they can hang out, they can cool off, they can recover, and they're not going to be thrashing around or bent up and kind of stressed out. They're going to be stressed out if they're in a small little net. And yeah,
Ex-
if you're targeting small fisheries, there's exceptions and you can downsize, but get yourself a big musky net. There's lots of good ones out there. So those I think are like in an effort to just not hit that a million times to turn people off. Those I think are requirements, absolute requirements to musky fishing if you plan to actually catch fish and release them safely, which I hope we all do. Are
I
you
couldn't.
did I preach enough, Josh?
That was a great preach session, Dano. I couldn't agree more. I mean, imagine you just ran like a 400 on the track for those of you track stars, or you just sprinted down the block, and then all of a sudden someone asks you to hold your breath. What are you gonna do? You're gonna pass out. The same thing with the fish. They just fought for their life, and now you're taking them out of the water. Keep that fish in the water. Make sure you have a net that can accommodate their size, and it's not going to rip off all the slime that's biologically beneficial for them to function in that aquatic environment and everything like that. So you want to keep them comfortable and just get in there, and you got a responsibility to get that hook up. It's all fun and games like to hook these big fish, but now once you get them in the bag, you have a very important responsibility to get them back into their habitat, swimming safely, and release them so they can help reproduce, and somebody else can enjoy the fishing experience as well.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do. I mean, we could spend another hour talking about fish handling with muskies and whatnot. So we're gonna have to come back to that and do a full deep
Yeah,
dive
sir.
and maybe even get some folks. But the other thing I'll just add, and then we'll move on. The Nipex, especially, I think, is also a human safety tool. We were just at the
Oh
Muskie
yeah.
Expo in Wausau the other weekend, and there was a puppy, a dog, who got a hook in its nose. You want to be able to cut that hook. And if you're going to cast a hook into your back, or very often you're dealing with a muskie with a hook in it, and he thrashes or she thrashes while that hook's in there, and you're holding onto the fish, and all of a sudden you got another hook in your hand. Nipex will save you. They will save you from having your day fucked up. I'll just put it that way. So I would encourage that.
Ugh.
I'll also make a plug because I don't know if anyone knows how to correctly pronounce that word. I have heard a little birdie tell me it's Knipex. The K
Oh,
might not be
oh.
silent, but I think that'd be a little weird. Knight, Knipex, Nipex, whatever it may be. It's a red one. It's German made. It cuts freaking anything. If you need a musky Christmas present, get that one. But kind of to wrap that all up, that section at least, I think if you are getting prepared under the theme of getting prepared for musky season, there's two things. Get yourself a toolkit, prepare your boat box and your toolkit, have backups, and maybe, take the time to look at some videos, how to gill plate grab, what to do. There's a lot of this stuff out there on the internet. Ask a buddy. Don't be ashamed. That buddy, if that buddy musky fishes, or that girl or guy musky fishes, and you come to them and be like, "Hey man, what happens when this happens? What do you do?"
Mhm.
They're gonna be, if it were me, I'd be like pumped. I'd be like, "Oh my God, let me tell you all about it. I'm so glad that you asked." This is, I think, what irks musky anglers more than anything is mishandling. So we'll put a pin in that for another episode and keep moving into a
Amen,
little bit.
brother.
Love it. Into a little bit more lighthearted, but probably one might call it the business end of the whole ordeal. Let's talk about flies. We're not going to spend. We're coming up on our longer episode here. We think it's appropriate because it's musky prep for the season. So we'll probably have to go deep into some of these later on. But let's get into flies.
All right, flies, getting all prepped up for the season. So I usually kind of just troubleshoot the early season muskies with some smaller end size flies. If they're not really in tune to that, I start leveling up to the bigger flies. And when
Well,
I'm
even
talking,
but even before that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but talk me through how you're preparing flies too for the season. We're in like the end of tying mode. Where's your head at in terms of preparing yourself with flies? And then maybe we can touch on some tactics a little bit if we want.
well, I've spent the last 9 weeks tying a bunch of flies with the Eau Claire Fly Tying Club and just sitting in the basement by myself, just cranking out stuff. So I'm kind of spoiled because you can't see it right here, but I have a big rack of flies, ranging from smallmouth to pike to muskie. And I can kind of take inventory of like what are the holes that I'm missing here, and then I'll tie some of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff up. I personally like to fish a lot of deceivers because they cover the whole gamut. So I'm talking like 5 to 7 inch deceivers. They'll cover everything from the crazy brook trout in the springtime to you'll get your whatever bycatch walleye, but you'll get a lot of pike and you'll get a lot of muskie on that early season. Um, and then I also I'm probably throwing a lot of like single hook Bufords, single hook style musky flies. And then if that's just not working, I'm gonna be leveling up a little bit to that two hooked uh fly type of foundation. So like a double Buford or something into that realm.
You also fish a lot of top water. I know we get asked about it. I've heard it several times in the shop. Who's that
Yep.
guy in that Keys episode doing the crazy two-handed stuff with the popper? What's he
Yeah.
up to? What's his deal?
Oh, I love top water. If you think you like musky fly fishing, wait till you get a muskie on top water. That's the next level. So you're at this
Ooh,
level, get to that next level of top water musky fly fishing. Oh, you'll never go back. But yeah, I'm just like prepping inventory, looking at what I lost last year, looking at what was effective, and every single year
I
is a
lost a lot of flies last year. Fuck.
Dan did lose a lot of flies, beautiful flies that he spent hours tying. But yeah, look at the holes in your inventory. Look at what you're missing. Kind of like make mental notes of what was really effective last year and how can I tweak that? How can I make it better? What do I need more inventory of? So I'm doing all that prep work going into the season.
Yeah. Well, and plus you got a guide. So I think that like elevates it to like you need, potentially flies for two people in the boat. You need backups and stuff like that. But I want to know, where do you land on the spectrum of like, I mean, I think I know the answer, but for everybody else, where do you land on the spectrum of like, I'm bringing the whole fucking arsenal of 12 different boxes, every color, every size, every single fly I got to like, you roll up to the boat landing with like the one confidence fly.
I,
Where are you at on that spectrum? Closer to
I
the
got
more or less?
I got you. Well, if you look at the most experienced anglers out there in the fly world, at least, they have their stuff dialed in, so they don't have to bring the whole grocery store. They're like, this is these two flies will cover this spectrum. These two or three flies will cover this spectrum, and so on down the line. So you don't have to bring everything in your arsenal. And like we were talking about a little bit before, we're not losing a ton of musky flies, so you don't have to bring
Hey now.
thousands of you don't have to bring thousands of musky flies with you. Just bring all of your confidence flies. That way you can quickly switch. You can fish the stuff you're confident in. I don't know. There's some guys out there
Yeah.
that go through their entire fly box in one day. I'm just not that guy. Like it's more about the
Yeah.
presentation to me than trying to rifle through all of these stupid patterns and whatnot.
Yeah,
Did that
I
answer your
agree with
question,
that. Yeah,
Daniel?
it did. It did. I agree with that. The only exception I'd make is like there are moments in the season where things aren't working or you haven't been fishing for a while and you do need to search. If you've been on the water for a while and you just know what's up and you know where they're at and what they're eating, yeah, you don't probably need to bring a whole lot. So I ebb and flow when I start the season, fucking spring rolls around, I'm probably gonna have a pile of flies in the boat.
Mm-hmm.
When I get to like August, September, October, November, I probably need three flies.
You
Like I
got
know
your
what's
shit
up.
dialed.
I got my shit, and it's just like I know what's going on. Um, the other thing I think is I don't know. I just have this. So I have a little bit of opinion and a little bit of science on this point, but I think there is something to be said, I think, about I agree, more important is a fly you're going to fish confidently than a hot fly.
Mm-hmm.
You and I could fish the same fly and you could get all the eats in the back of the boat because I'm staring at that fly and kind of like, yeah, I'm not really fishing it with enthusiasm. I'm not fishing it. I'm just stripping it back to the boat. And what I mean by that is I'm not eliciting a presentation. I'm just moving my fly back to the boat. La 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 la. And I think that is how I think more important than some special magic fly that you saw on Instagram, la di fucking da, is fish that thing that you got. Like
Yep.
if it's a heaping mess, you can still bring life to it. And that is what I think makes a better fly than anything, special. That being said, I have a penchant for I love crazy cool colors. We're obviously spoiled here at Musky Fool with the world's best bucktail made by Gabe. So we're always doing, I want a special fly with cool colors and a white belly and Wisco flame head. But the end of the day, I'll tell you right now, that shit does not matter. They did a study on this. We'll hopefully get into the study more when we find that person that did the study, but it kind of conclusively addressed the point that color is for the angler for muskie.
Yep.
Muskies may perceive color. They may like more color than others, but at the end of the day, when they took muskies and they blinded the shit out of them, they literally removed their eyesight. Those fish hunted as well as the muskies that had eyesight. which leads us to believe that they are not using that as their main predatory attack weapon. They are movement, presentation, profile, the effective noise that fly makes in the water because of its profile, its size, its length, its width, the amount of water it pushes, all of those things matter. That does not mean that every single time the fly that pushes the most water is the best, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it needs to be subtle. But really think about that. Don't ignore color. Doesn't mean Wisco Flame ain't the fucking raddest color ever invented. It's the sweetest thing ever. It's just like sex in a musky fly. Oh my God, I love it. But it's probably more for me to fish it with confidence than it is for the muskie. And that's just muskies. I'm not talking about trout. I'm not talking about bass. I'm talking about muskies. I don't know if you strongly agree or disagree either way, Josh, but I think that's a little bit of fairy dust that I'd sprinkle on this one.
I 100% agree with all that, Dan. When you look at the novice folks in this game and you look at the so-called masters in this game, the biggest difference is there's people that are going out there and they're just going through the motions, and there's people that are literally hunting those flies.
And
They're
it's
looking
honestly,
at,
it's not even flies. I totally agree with you, and I want to hear
yeah,
you keep going. But this is gear anglers and flying musky anglers. I think I agree with you 100%.
exactly. Whether you're gear or fly, you're hunting that lure, you're hunting that bait, you're looking at the different nuances. You're paying attention 100% of the time. Your head is in the game. um, you're not just stripping it in with this certain cadence. You're looking at how that fly's moving. You're giving it some hang time. You're trying new things with it, all to trigger a strike. So that's the biggest difference there. And the second part of that is confidence. I mean, that definitely leads into confidence. So, like a lot of bass guys I know, they'll put stripes on the top side of their frogs, or eyes on their side of the frogs. The chances are the fish is not going to see all that. But if it gives you confidence and it keeps you into the game longer and it keeps you in a positive mindset, that's also extremely important too. So when
Agreed.
you're
Yep.
you're spending all this time tying the most beautiful fly and the fish doesn't give two craps about it, but it makes you confident, that's also super important. But
Yeah. And I mean, it goes to the point too of this is some of the beauty of fly fishing is if you gave me a run of the mill, double Buford, double nickel, whatever it may be, and I got one fly to fish with the whole day, I still have so much to learn. Does that want the fish? Are they what like this is when I'm in the boat, this is what I am looking for. This is what I am trying to discover in a certain day. What cadence, what presentation, what speed, how long do they really want a long pause? Do they literally want a dead stop? Do they want it accelerated? Do they want a mixture of both? Do they want it slapped in there? Does it need to be subtle? You can do all that with one fly.
mm-hmm.
You can let it sink. You can rip it on top. And I think those are the variables. We don't know. There's no perfect science. There's nobody out there that catches 100x more muskie than the next guy, except the live scope. We'll talk about that in another episode for sure. But without giving that away, we're all searching for something any given day, any given water body. And when it comes to flies, don't feel overwhelmed. You can simplify the process there. It doesn't mean there's not awesome, well-tied flies that do crazy stuff. We've all had these moments where I couldn't buy a bite that day unless that fly had a dragon tail steadily stripped back. Or we couldn't get a bite that day unless it was a big swooping glide fly. Or, we all have these confidence things, but don't keep your mind open. Let the fish tell you what's going on, and don't think that you need to rifle through your box. Rifle through your presentations before you rifle through your box. Um, so I think that's at least for season preparation, that's where we're at. I'm also maybe just a procrastinator to kind of bring it all the way back. But like now, between now and musky openers, like when I start tying flies, we get so busy with the holiday. What's up, Jordy? Jordy's on video. Jordy, uh, I get so busy with the holidays, the holiday season at the shop. Then we quickly get into trade show season. I kind of just need to take a break. You're fishing hard. It's December. Your body and mind are broken. So I don't just hit December and start fly tying. It's like the next 30 days is like go time. I feel inspired. I'm ready to go. And it's also just to put a bow on this, it's kind of when I try to do some weird stuff. I think about what didn't I have last year? What were those days where it didn't work? I really, and this is more of a encouragement for all those incredible fly tires out there. I'm telling you right now, where musky fly anglers are undergunned is deep flies and topwater flies. We got a shit pile of bait fish flies that swim mid column. We do not have a lot of cool, innovative topwater flies. Look at your gear baits, flap tails, creepers. There's so much out there, and the muskies love topwater, and it's not just a big old SpongeBob that chugs. There's innovation there. I don't have the answers. I've tried to mess with some stuff. I'm working on a flap tail pattern right now, but it's and then deep stuff, the pounder style flies. That's why I use split ring. So it's kind of a push to all those innovative folks out there tying new flies, like experiment. This is the time to, come up with a few crazy ideas and put them together, whip it up at the vise, tying with intention, tying with a thought or a fishing situation in mind. And
Mm.
then, 39 days, it's go time, time to put it in the water and see what happens. So any final words for you on preparing for the season when it comes to flies, Josh?
No final words, Daniel. I think you hit the nail on the head there, buddy.
Love it, love it. All right, we're gonna kind of transition. Oh my God, we're at an hour and a half. This is beautiful. This is the longest episode we've ever done, Josh. I'm
Oh,
not gonna rush. I'm not gonna rush. This might be long. Josh might be editing this for the whole month of April. And newsflash, Josh is the editing master on this guy. But we're excited. As you cannot tell from our voices, folks, it's the final countdown, musky season. You can smell it. The snow's melting. Oh my God. So we're gonna get into kind of the other side of planning for the season. A little bit of boats and like how we look at the season. Um, so I definitely, I, for those that know me, I come from a finance background. I like numbers. So I definitely kind of try to overanalyze. That's what I love about musky fishing is you can just analyze everything. Sometimes none of it makes sense. Sometimes you think you've cracked the code, then it breaks. So when I start the season, like right now, I'm definitely I'm always looking at what I did last year, what I can change this year. How can I be more efficient? How can I better approach it? One thing that has started to nag at me as I get older is kind of wasted time. I love having fun with the guys and the girls and my wife and my buddies hanging out musky fishing, but man, I'm not getting any younger. The fish aren't getting any easier. So how can I use the calendar and now think ahead and be like, man, this is what I want to accomplish. So one of the ways I do that, nothing original here, but I'm looking at the solar lunar calendar. This is not an end all be all guarantee to catching muskies, but I'll tell you right now, I want to be on the water for the June and July full and new moon. I want to be on the water in August, September, October, November when those new moons hit. I want to be on the water in the days leading up to them. Those are the important days. If you're scheduling a wedding right now and you want me to come to it, if it's on a new or full moon, I'm sick, I'm busy, I can't make it. I'm just letting you know every excuse in the book. So that's one of the kind of how I review the season and try and get smarter about the next one. What about you, Josh?
Good to know, Dano. Yeah, that's a super type A approach for sure.
I'm
But
sorry, I can't help it.
no, if you're serious about this game and you're serious about leveling up and getting after those big fish, that's what you got to do. It's the devil's in the details for sure. And historically, the new moon has always been better than for me than the full moon and whatnot. So yeah,
hmm
always I like to keep a printed calendar in my truck. It kind of makes you look a little bit more badass, but it also keeps you accountable.
It keeps you accountable. I also, again, you might call me out. This is type A, but I like to kind of have some goals for the season. And I don't normally share these, but here we are in a podcast sharing everything. Um, and I think one of those goals for me has it's been elusive. I've spent a lot of time, um, behind the sticks, not fishing as productively as I could have been. So a true Wisconsin 50-inch giant.
Mm-hmm.
I have a nice record of 4-footers, but that one has been elusive for me for a while. I know you got one in the books, but like a true Wisconsin 50 plus. It's always been on the books, and I think that is every season that goes by and that doesn't happen, and I get closer and I make mistakes, I hone that in. And yeah, some people get lucky. Their first muskie's a 50-incher in Wisconsin, and that's not me. I've never been lucky. Um, so I really like that is what drives me, and I think what forces me to think more deeply about the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another like kind of goal that's unique to this season is we're fishing the PMTT. I
Mm-hmm.
want to go out and represent fly fishing for muskies. I want it to be taken seriously as a real tactic to catch muskies. Do I think we're going to win? Absolutely not. Oh my God, fuck no. There's an incredible amount of anglers that have been fishing this tournament way longer than I have. They know way more about muskies. There's no chance. No chance. Unless I had 15 live scopes in the boat, still no chance because those are illegal. Our goal is to go out, represent, catch a muskie on the Madison chain with fly rods while everyone else is using conventional gear. Um, and then I think the only other one, or a couple more, is filming more regularly. You and I are probably similar here, but yes, we have a business. We've made muskies our life. Um, we got some really cool projects in the works that require us to get better at putting muskies on film and telling stories about muskie fishing. And I think it's hard. It's hard to make sure the batteries are charged and you got the right angles and you have the right equipment and it's really production level quality. So that's a goal. And then, just overall, now that we're at with Musky Fool, this is another one that's just elevated itself. It's like I get so excited looking at the calendar now of all the guide trips and making sure me kind of in the office supporting all you guys, the guides, that we have an awesome season. I want to catch so many muskies vicariously through our clients. It's insane. I would
Mm-hmm.
give up catching my 50-inch muskie if that dude or gal catches hers with you in the boat, or Rowan or Nick or Gabe or Hunter. And I genuinely mean that. I mean, it's just like I wish we almost need to video it like after a day of a muskie guide trip. And I think I can speak for all you guys. I know you guys well. Like when they don't get one, when you're in the boat with these guys and you don't get one, they come back beaten and broken and disappointed and they feel useless and
Mm-hmm.
it means so much to them. And on the flip side, like we are celebrating our fucking asses off when we get one or we get two or we get three or that client catches their PB. Like it is victory in a bottle. It is so pure and exciting. And I just want that. I want to make sure we're all set up for that, from making sure the details are lined up to helping you guys where we're going to go, how we're going to go, what we're going to do. And I think those are kind of like, if I look at the goals for my season, I think that's how I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Well said, Daniel.
You touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but maybe just shortly reiterate a little bit, I believe, kind of how you're thinking about the goals for your season. Or maybe you're type B and you're like, fuck that shit. I just want to fish.
Yeah, my goals basically for every season are just kind of like reflect on what I did last year, kind of get out of my comfort zone, find new water, make that my new comfort zone. And then on the guiding spectrum of things, do everything in my possible power to make sure that people are connecting with fish and we're bagging fish. Um, there's like that old saying, it's like we put you in a position, we get you all up to that moment, and then it's in the hands of the universe. But it's like, what can I do to even further that? Like I want my clients to succeed. I get on their case a little bit when they're slacking off or they're not paying attention and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I want them to catch a muskie so bad. I want them to have that memory of holding their first fish on the fly so badly that, like, oh, it's just I can't even describe it. Like you touched on it, Dad. Like you want it more than you want it for yourself. Definitely, 100%. So that's one of my biggest goals for this season. Another one of my goals is probably to just strike more of a balance between spending time with my wife and fishing in general. I'm sure a lot of people can relate with that, but I feel like in the last couple of years, it's been a little bit more skewed towards fishing.
Muskies fuck with you that way, man. They you know they cloud everything else out, and you think they're the most important thing, and they're the newsflash. They're definitely not.
They do. So that's one of the bigger goals. But at the end of the day, it's
Laura will
all
thank you for that.
she certainly will. At the end of the day, it is really the most important thing is in this game. If you want to have longevity, is having fun and staying super positive. There's folks out there they get down on themselves. They take everything too seriously. That I mean,
Ego's the son of a bitch. Leave it,
you
leave it. It doesn't belong on the water. Leave it at
you
the
can't
boat landing.
you can't do that. You can't do that if you want to be in this game for a long time. You've spent too many hours, too many resources personally, financially, emotionally, blah blah blah, to let it get down on you. I mean, they're muskies, they're a wild animal, so they're going to do what they want to do. Just go out there. If it happens for you, great. If it doesn't, learn from that experience, enjoy something else, change your perspective a little bit, and just have an absolute awesome time on the water. Figure out what the silver lining is for you.
I love it. I think that's something my type A. I can sit here and tell you I want to do that and I'm going to do that, but I need constant reminders. It's probably why I like fishing. I think we make good fishing partners.
We
You
do,
know, I I,
Dano.
I definitely can be. I can get a little twisted in the mind about it, especially when it's not going well, a little too serious. And if you've fished for muskies long enough, you know there's some cruel fucking fate about like the more serious you are about it, the less they care about you. You gotta kind of give yourself up to it. Just let it happen. Do everything in your power to make it happen and increase your odds, but at the end of the day, know that it could happen outside of your control. Um, Okay, let's talk about boats. We got a couple topics left, but boats, boats, boats. This is a huge part of preparing for the muskie season. It's not only getting your boats, making sure your new boat arrived and is dialed and broken in and whatnot, but making sure it's ready to go for the season and whatnot. So start with you, Josh. I know Shamu just arrived. She's back in her den. And you got a different boat setup, I believe, than you did last year, at least for the majority of the season. So what are you running briefly, and then what are you doing to prepare them for the season?
Yes, sir. I got two boats in my arsenal. Shamu, which is an 1872 Stealth Weld Mod V by Stealthcraft. She's a jet sled. And then I also have Rocky, which is a Hooligan XL
Who
raft.
names
She's
these? Are you naming them? Because you got a
I
penchant for
name
naming
them.
them.
They're my
That's so
baby.
good. That's
They're
so
my
good.
babies. And then I can tell everyone, oh, we're taking Shamu out today, or we're taking Rocky, blah, 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 blah. So we'll start off with Shamu. She's a big girl. She needs a lot of love. She weighs over 3,000 pounds. She's got a 150, 105 Honda Jet on the back of her with an 24-volt, 85-pound thrust trolling motor system, which I regard as one of the most important fishing tools I have on that boat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I got to make sure that she's in very much working order. At the beginning of the season, I do a thorough walkthrough of absolutely everything on that boat, from all the toggle switches, the electrical system, to the terminals on the battery, to the oil change, the bearings on the trailer, blah 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 blah. Last year, like I said previously, we beat her up pretty good, but she's
You
back
got
in act.
some new refresh. She got refreshed. She got a little bit of a cosmetic makeup makeover this year. She looks good.
Yes, sir. She's back in
Shout out to
action.
Stealthcraft. Big
Stealth
shout out to Stealthcraft.
Big old fat shout out to Stealthcraft. They treated me extremely well. I could not be happier with all the service they provided. They put on a brand new bottom I beat her up so good. I ripped off the previous bottom. I ripped off the anchor arm. I ripped off the
Oh, I
trolling
remember
motor
that day.
mount. The electronics weren't working because we jostled her so bad, and there was just all sorts of stuff wrong with her. So they fixed absolutely everything, and they gave me a couple upgrades. But again, if you're serious about this game and you're fishing big bodies of water, you got to have a serious tool for the job. So
Yeah.
Shamu definitely gets it done. And then
And
the
we'll talk
last,
about boats. Sorry to interrupt you. We'll talk
oh,
about
go for
boats
it.
more deeply because there's so many side channels and avenues. But just for what Josh fishes, I don't want to speak for you. I would probably say 80+% of the time you're on big rivers.
Big
And
rivers.
and that's where rocky rivers, treacherous rivers, and that's where he really can't get into those spots effectively without a big, robust jet, especially when you're musky fishing and you want a lot of gear and you want a lot of space and it's late in the season and you're cold and you need snacks and you need, all the accommodations. So for those of
Exactly.
you asking why, he's got a jet, the hull itself is literally bulletproof. It's almost, I don't want to say too heavy, but it is like robust. It is a fat mama. She is going to ruin that rock's day. And then you run with the jet, and the jet, mainly because of how skinny you need to get with that, which is an important topic. You definitely sacrifice some power, but
Yep.
what you gain is skinny water, and then that thing can go very, very skinny, especially at slow speeds.
Yep.
Where we'll talk about Rowan's boat maybe later. His boat can go skinny, but mainly at high speeds, and I think that's a unique thing that you require with that. It can also perform in the lakes. Uh,
Yep.
Struggles a little bit with the weeds because it's going to zip up and suck up some weeds, but you can work yourself around that. But for where you're fishing, it really truly is the perfect warship.
It's a great boat. She's almost like a little Abrams tank, like Dan was saying. She's super heavy, super robust, but she can get through very skinny water. She shines pretty heavily on smaller lakes, not so much on like gigantic lakes, as you would imagine with a jet boat.
Like when we ripped your trolling motor mount off going
Yeah,
across 10-mile-an-hour chop on a gigantic flowage system. You just it's not ideal for that.
exactly. But smaller lakes, you can get away with it. And
Oh yeah.
the fact of the matter is, there's no one boat that exists today that'll get the job done. That's why,
Nope.
if you're very serious again about your fishing endeavors and targeting these large trophy fish, you got to have an arsenal. So that brings me to the next boat, Rocky, which is a stealth craft Hooligan XL. So she's 14'6" long. She's got about a 60-inch beam on her, and she houses three anglers or three boatmen pretty effectively. So you got a rower and then you got an angler on the front and the back there. And that boat is the absolute workhorse of the summer, especially in the last couple years when we've experienced those low water seasons. That boat can get through very, very skinny water. Some of you may have seen it on the Keys Outdoors episode. We were drafting through inches of water with probably 800 pounds of gear or more on that. And so
Lots of camera batteries.
she can accommodate a full film crew, fishing equipment, overnight equipment. Man, and those
Yeah.
boats
And
are tough. They're
they
super,
are.
super tough. You can beat the hell out of them, and they're very, very rugged, extremely stable. I had clients last year that were in their upper 80s, and they felt super comfortable in that
Yeah.
vessel.
I would love to have unlimited amount of boats, but that boat surprised me in how much it fishes like a drift boat,
Yep.
such that I literally sold my drift boat because I can get that boat into like boat rampless waters where access is tough. You can portage it pretty easily, but it's pretty stable. It motors well. It rows pretty well. I mean, there's definitely reasons a drift boat outperforms. Drift boats are going to row better. They're going to track better. They're going to have more room. They're going to be more stable. But I think, the trade-off that we make, especially when you have a jet boat like you do, you get some of that that water that you could not get to in a drift boat, you can get to with the hooligans, at least up in Wisconsin. And then, that water where drift boats are good, rafts are pretty darn good as well. We
Yep.
were on a pretty medium-sized river with keys, and typically, I mean, for me, that was actually only the second time I've ever floated that river in my raft. Before the last 5, 6 years before that was all how long I had the drift boat, 7 years, was all drift boat. A lot of that was higher water, but it's been, totally perfect drift boat water, and those drift boats rose so nicely. But I think I got limited garage space. I know you do. I
Hmm.
got, limited boat budget, and I think the rafts are pretty good. There's trade-offs too. I mean, you're gonna I had a clack-a-craft. I mean, those things could literally the amount of boat maintenance I did to that thing was laughable. It's literally put it away wet and just use it and abuse it. You got to be a little bit more gentle to the rafts. You got to wash them out, get the grime out of the cracks. Take that floor out and clean it and check for holes. Using all the protectant stuff. You got all different types of, patch kits that you really need to bring with you. You got to use the 303 every once in a while, the sun protectant.
Hmm.
Um, so they do take a little bit more TLC, but I do, they're just very, very, very versatile. I have almost the exact same boat, same exact inner tubes as Josh, a little bit different rowing frame, but kind of becoming a necessary tool for multi-species Midwest stuff, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. The thing I love about Stealth Craft too is they 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 definitely treat you right. Like if you got any questions about fixing an inner tube, how to clean all the fluorine, how to fix like a leaky weld or fix a valve, they're gonna respond to you and they're gonna hook you up with the necessary skills or materials that it requires to make that fix as well.
I totally agree with that. Um, yeah. So a little bit on my end, and then we'll move through boats. So I got the same raft as Josh, as I said. I love them. As far as kind of preparing, well, the only other thing we talked about is oars, or didn't talk about maybe is oars, but in
Ooh.
preparing for the season, making sure, I think oars are another area of maintenance. I got a new set
Hmm.
of oars, so mine are pretty good, but I'll be looking at putting a new coat on them, make sure the sun's not eating away at the oar shafts, checking the blades. If you need, I don't know, it depends how much you fish, but I tend to need to re-rope wrap about every 2 or 3 years. So I'm pretty good for this year. I got the rope wraps look good. But that's another thing if you're not getting performance that you
Hmm.
need. I also will kind of re-grease the oar locks to make sure they're not squeaky. I'll check some of the anchor rope systems to make sure, any little upgrades I wanted to make. So this year we talked about it filming. I think we're both trying to really dial in our filming setup on those rafts because gear space is tight. Um, and they're really versatile rafts, so we're going to use them to take them to cool places. And it's like, how do we effectively film with all that? So I feel like I got mine pretty dialed in with a couple different changes and batteries and whatnot. Um, and like just little kind of gear accessory add-ons. But the only thing I got to do this year still yet is figure out if I do need to get new tubes. I do have a leak in one of them. I not to throw him under the bus. He knows who he is. He's a lifelong buddy of mine. But we put a little bit of a little ding in her, and at least I believe. So it's a crazy how durable they are because like it's still you pump it up, she fishes for a day and she just gets flat by the morning, and you pump her back up and she's good to go. Um, but probably need to figure that out in the next 30 days, either patch it up or uh or get some new tubes going.
Hmm.
And then I also got I have a new boat coming. I'm supposed to have a new boat coming. I'm not going to get into all the details because a lot of it's up into the air right now, but it's just say I've been a clusterfuck acquiring a new boat. My goal has been to be able to attack large water, large lakes, flowages with fly rods. In order to do that, you need a bigger boat, you need a prop, you need something that's going to break waves. Newsflash, you also really need electronics, good trolling
Hmm.
motor, side imaging. If you don't think that shit has any place in fly fishing, come fish with me on an 8,000 acre flowage, and you'll realize you're going to want some side imaging real quick. So it's still up in the air. I think we got something lined in. I think it's going to work. I think we're going to have an awesome, awesome boat before the season opens. But hopefully we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more. I also believe, we've gotten you all excited about boats and we're not showing them. We're going to hopefully, after this airs, Josh and myself kind of do some walkthroughs. I know I'm itching to see a full walkthrough of the new and improved Shamu and
Mhm.
possibly the boat that I will be getting. But yeah, you just, overall, I think now is the time to hone that in, man. If you got improvements you want to make, additions you want to make, changes you want to make, that little piece up in the bow that was always snagging fly line, you want to remove that. Like now's the time to do that. Don't go into the season with that stuff nagging at you. You got 39 days plus if you're fishing southern opener, 39 days, northern opener, another couple weeks after that. So figure it out, get your boat fixed up. If you're looking for a new boat before the season, I will tell you, you better hurry up. You can probably pick one up used. You can probably pick one up off the sales floor. You might be able to call Stealthcraft and get one on their lot. Um, but really at this point, you're probably looking at getting a new boat for the next season, especially if you want something brand spanking new. So you got to start thinking ahead on that stuff. Really last topic we got, I think it's probably one that gets overlooked. Oh, well, let me pause. Did you skip anything? Did I skip anything on boats? Is there anything you wanted to add?
I don't think so, Dan.
Okay,
You
good,
covered it
good,
well. Jordy, come
good.
here.
What's up, Jordy? I know it's been a
Jordy's
while,
going
buddy.
nuts here, buddy.
I know. Do you need to take a Jordy break?
No, I'm all good.
All right. So the last topic on preparing for the season, and this one I might just be talking to myself here, but it's really about preparing your mind and body.
Oh,
This is where musky fishing separates the few from the rest. It is hard work. It beats you up mentally and physically. Anybody that says it does not fish hard enough or long enough. And that's not a ego contest. There's no way around it. It beats you up. Unless you're sitting in the boat trolling all day long, it absolutely eats at you. And I think I can speak to that. So I had kind of 2 seasons, and Josh is gonna laugh because he's been coaching me through this, making sure I actually am diligent about healing myself up. But on the physical side, I kind of had 2 seasons where not paying attention to his shoulder, not stretching it. I'm getting older. Boo hoo me. It happens to everybody. Not really thinking about it, just going out and fishing, waking up at 5 in the morning and just showing up at the boat landing like a spring chicken, thinking I'm just gonna fish for 12 hours. My shoulder was very, very tight. That tight shoulder led me to favoring it and making some really improper adjustments with my cast. And I got tennis elbow pretty bad. This was about 2 seasons ago. I kind of healed that up. I didn't really heal it up preventatively. I just like, okay, it doesn't hurt anymore. And I was kind of nursing it. I was making adjustments so my elbow wouldn't hurt. And that led me to some issues with my hands. Yes, I'm a hot mess, I know. But I have kind of 30 days to go, and I had some pretty serious. I mean, my right hand was unusable at the end of last season. Trigger finger and my pinky from really gripping down too hard on a rod because my elbow and my shoulder hurt. But I got it figured out. I'm on the straight and narrow. I got an awesome physical therapist who whipped my ass into shape. Laughed at
good.
me because yeah, and I think it feels so weird and kind of awkward to say, but like we are doing physical exercise.
Yep.
This is tough, and I think I need to tell myself that like this is not lazy man sport. This is something you should really, especially when you're getting over that hump, 30, 40, 50 plus years old, stretching, physical therapy, exercising, it all matters. Your diet, shit like that. I mean, if you don't take this shit seriously, tune out. I totally get you. We probably take it a little too seriously, but all that stuff adds up and gives you longevity. So that's something I'm preparing. I'm on the clock. I got to do my exercises every day. Um, again, I've sound like a broken record, but hopefully we'll maybe do a deep dive into some of that body preparation on musky fishing and physical therapy. But yeah, I got a lot going on. I'm trying I'm two-hand casting. I've been practicing casting with my left hand just to reduce some of that pressure. So that's kind of me on the physical season. I feel like a hot mess, genuinely. Like I feel a lot better now. A month ago, it was like this is disaster. I can't even hold a bottle of water. How am I gonna musky fish? But things have gotten a lot better.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
a little embarrassing.
we certainly take our health for granted, but we're putting this equipment to its absolute max threshold and our bodies to the threshold, whether it's, we're bass fishing for 10 hours, 12 hours a day, or we're trying to huck these big rods and big flies and sub 30-degree temperatures. You're Whether you like to admit it or not, your body is being pushed. And as adults, we tend to not take the best care of our bodies. So you got to make sure that you're hydrated. You got to make sure you have good nutrition if you're serious about the longevity in this game, like Dan was saying.
Turns
And
out you can't just get by on tobacco, malort, and drugs for musky fishing. It doesn't work like that, folks. It takes a different approach, especially as we get gray.
exactly, we're not all young bucks like
Ugh,
some of these musky fools are. We're
I
getting
know,
old,
I know.
Dano.
I know, buddy. It feels weird to even admit, but at least we're in good company. At least we're in good company. I think
Yeah.
mentally too, it's a good time to like reset your expectations. We'll bring it all the way back because this is kind of where Josh started the podcast, kind of that Zen mentality. It's not
Yep.
all going to go your way this year. Really think about what do you want to get out of this season? What changes do you want to make? It's so easy, at least for me, to get lazy mid-season and fall back on old habits, go back to old spots. Oh man, it's been a week since I caught one. I'm going to go back to the honey hole. Do
Hmm.
you really want to do that? Or are you just getting lazy and you want to catch one? And that's okay too, but like I think be intentional. Um, that would be my kind of words of advice in life and in musky fishing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's okay to get down on yourself a little bit and maybe switch gears, switch your perspective, and step away from the musky fly game. If you need to go out and target some smallmouth or you need to go do some summer trout fishing, that's totally fine. Like, the most important thing is, in this game of very little chances and very small encounters, you got to stay super positive. So whatever that means to you and however you achieve it, that's the most
Yeah.
important thing.
And I think it's funny to hear you say that because it's like you're like, yeah, just do whatever you got to do if you need to go trout fishing. And it's like I don't believe you for a second, Josh. Have you ever gone trout fishing in the middle of summer? But it's true. Have fun, man. We're getting
Yeah.
like super serious on boat setups and prepping for the season. Like this is fishing. Have fun. Muskies are kicking your ass. Well, fuck them. Go do something else. Go hang out with the wife or the husband or the kids or friends and do something that gives you joy because sometimes muskies will not be if muskies are you're looking for joy, they are cruel. They live in the seventh layer of hell. They hate everything. They're mean, they're twisted. They are not a source of joy. Yeah,
No.
when you catch them, but that is just a trick that they play with you. They're a challenge. I think that's kind of it, man. I mean, we covered a lot. Oh my God. We had the notes that we had did not make me think it was going to take us 2 hours, but I'm glad we didn't rush. I hope people find this informative, especially as people are gearing up for Wisconsin season, Minnesota season, Canada's right after that. It's so much fun to watch everybody and be a part of everybody's season and enjoy it all together. But it's coming fast. Hopefully this helps you get your mind right, get your gear right, and get you set up. But yeah, I think we covered most of the topics. Please, please, please give us a shout if you want to hear more, if we missed something, if you want to hear us elaborate on something. We're very excited for the 2023 season. We're very excited for you for the 2023 season, whether you're chasing them for your 20th season or your first. They're all awesome. Please give us a shout at the shop. We got a whole crew of guides. We'll get you dialed in. We'll give you some therapy if you need some coaching on getting your mind right. It can be
Mhm.
overwhelming from the gear to everything, but we got an incredible crew of anglers, and we really, really enjoy helping y'all out. So please, please reach out. We'd also love to fish with you. Now's your chance to get on the books with some of these guys, and it'll be fun. I promise you that. They're an awesome group of anglers. They know a lot. They're a fun time. Calendars are filling up. I say it seriously. You're going to want to get in on the magic. It's going to go fast. So please reach out on that end. But yeah, man, that's it. It's another episode in the books. What do you got to say?
Yes, sir. Couldn't agree with you more, Dano. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the water soon.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Please subscribe, comment, and give us any and all feedback. Social media, YouTube, podcast app, wherever you listen to podcasts, or muskyfool.com. Y'all are the best. We'll see you later. Thank you for listening to the Spot Burn Podcast. Coming to you from the dungeon, this podcast is presented by Musky Fool Fly Fishing Co. We want to thank our awesome sponsors, Cortland Line Company and Stealth Craft Boats. We also want to thank all of you, our listeners, for tuning in, subscribing, sharing, and spreading the good word. If you haven't heard, go check us out at muskyfool.com. Have fun out there on the water, y'all.